is Tom Foley inviting you to step into the Montreal Forum and join 15,000 fans in watching hockey history. It's October 19th, 1957. All eyes are on the familiar number 9, the fabulous Maurice Richard. It's a regular National Hockey League game between Montreal Canadiens and Chicago Blackhawks. But it's also the night that the Rocket, hockey's greatest goal scorer, will attain the remarkable total of 500 goals. No other player has even reached the 400 mark. And so here tonight, early in the 1957-58 campaign, one of the world's finest athletes scores his 500th goal. The season ended, leaving the question of whether any other hockey player would ever score 500 times in National Hockey League competition. The Rocket is...
Maurice Richard's parents were originally from Gaspé on the eastern coast of Quebec. He was the oldest of 8 children and was born on August 4th, 1921. Around the time he was born, they moved to Nouveau-Bordeaux, a community in Montreal. This is an example of centralization and communities beginning to migrate more towards the inner city to make something of themselves, a big social element of the 1920s. His father worked for the Canadian Pacific Railway, which was hit surprisingly hard in the Great Depression, which occurred when Richard was 9 years old. The Richard family unfortunately experienced a lot of hard times due to the financial issues as they progressed into poverty. The effect that this had on a family with 10 people is just a lot of unproductive time, for nobody was working, and in communities this resulted in a lot of people being in the neighborhood more often than being at work. Throughout his childhood he was remarkably athletic. He received his first pair of skates when he was 4 years old. Because of his high amount of siblings, 4 brothers and 3 sisters, he had a lot of people to play casually with as a child. With the effect of the Great Depression, the area of Montreal flourished with hockey as an increasingly popular sport, and in the winter, Richard's father would make ice rinks in the backyard. The Depression deprived Richard of the ability to be enrolled in a type of children's hockey league, which is almost always necessary for advancing in the world of hockey. However, this allowed Richard to play excessive amounts of pickup hockey in his community and with his family. The lack of ability to play in a league deprived Richard of proper rules and techniques, which were familiar to the hockey world at the time. When he did start playing in leagues, he enrolled in different teams in different leagues under different pseudonyms to allow himself more ice time. Even with doing that, he was unhappy with how little time he was spending on the ice. This is a microcosm for the disappointment Richard was experiencing in life. His family moved to an urban area with the intentions of the American dream, which had clearly expanded to Canada at the time. Soon after, his parents were out of work and searching for jobs. The people he looked up to were struggling to survive, and with 7 siblings, he was not getting the attention for a boy deprived of regular social features in life due to the lack of his family's money. Richard was always defined as being socially awkward and quiet, but there were clearly a lot of built-up anger and unresolved feelings regarding his social life. Competition, and more specifically hockey, was a great outlet for these feelings, and the way he played correlated with these feelings. Richard had become a staple in Francophile culture during his career from 1942 to 1960. French Canadians, who for the most part resided in the Montreal area, watched their team be made up of Anglophiles since hockey's inception. This wasn't too big of a problem, since there was not as much racial segregation between the English and French when compared to the Aboriginals. However, people in Quebec were never exposed to a hero whom they could idolize, as well as also relate to from a cultural aspect. Richard brought a very physical style to the game and was a very controversial player who local fans gravitated towards. This could be attributed to the fact that so many radio stations covered Maple Leafs games, so fans in Montreal who could not afford tickets to live games could listen to hockey on the radio. However, more than not, it was Toronto games being listened to. Richard, being such a polarizing player, demanded discussion. All of a sudden, stations that didn't typically cover the Montreal Canadiens were talking about Maurice Richard. This gave a sense of pride to Quebec locals, and more specifically Francophiles, and gave them the ability to be proud of a representative of their Canadian subculture. The riot of 1955 was terrible for the city and caused lots of problems and property damage and physical injuries. However, this clearly represented how passionate people were for their team and their favorite player. The minority group of French Canadians had a superstar hero who they idolized and saw as representative for their city and culture. When this hero was no longer available, people could not adjust to a world without heroes. This again was a microcosm for the idea that people need someone to look up to as a crutch for their own lives. Maurice Richard was the first example of this for an entire society of people who felt their culture had come second in so many ways to the English.